Hey folks, Alan Saunders live with Pittsburgh postgame after the Pittsburgh Penguins return to play in the National Hockey League preseason action up in Toronto. The Penguins losing to the Philadelphia Flyers 3-2 in overtime. I'll be joined in just a second here by Dan Kingerski, who is up in Toronto with the Penguins, not physically with the Penguins, I guess, but Dan has his quarantine digs up there as he's following the guidelines to get himself into Canada and to be able to cover the entirety of the Penguins Stanley Cup run, which will, of course, start this weekend against the Montreal Canadiens. The Penguins get a goal from Connor Sheary, a goal from Jason Zucker, but 2 goals against Matt Murray, and then the lone goal against Tristan Jarry in the overtime period gives the Flyers the advantage. And Dan, broad takeaway from the first time we've seen the Penguins in a long time on competitive ice.
Yeah, what a treat that was. I mean, I don't quite care if the game didn't count. I don't care if the Penguins lost. What a treat it was to just watch an actual hockey game. And if you didn't have a little bit of chills or a little tingle in your spine when they dropped that puck somewhere around 4:15 Eastern time today, I'd say check your pulse. Alan, I thought the teams kind of had that burst of energy too in the first few minutes of the game. They were a little bit like puppies running around. The ice wasn't so great. The puck was bouncing everywhere off their sticks, and the guys needed a few minutes to settle down. So I think it was unique even for them, with no fans in the stands and just everything that this whole pandemic has done to us. There in that 200 feet of ice was something normal, at least for a couple hours, right?
Yeah, I thought so. And, it was just there's nothing normal, right? Because right away you notice no fans, of course, broadcasters not in the building. But I thought the product still looked like NHL hockey. It seemed like the guys were, even though the game technically doesn't count for anything, I thought it seemed like they were really going at it, hits and full bore.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't as physical as we're going to see probably on Saturday. Saturday is August 1st, right? I kid you not. I am losing track of hours and days kind of in quarantine. But
I can confirm that August 1st is this Saturday, and that is the first game the Penguins will play against the Montreal Canadiens at 8 p.m.
Yeah. It'll be more physical then. I thought Jack Johnson was physical today. He and Justin Schultz were very simple, very smooth back there. And Tanev was his pot-stirring self. Hornquist did a little bit of that as well with Jared McCann, as those guys mixed it up on the wall a little bit. It wasn't your typical Flyers-Penguins game. Maybe respect, both teams wanted to make sure that they got to this weekend unscathed and healthy. But it still, yes, it was, I will grant you, it was probably an average game for late October or even November, which, considering everything, was pretty extraordinary.
Now, I want to ask you about the goaltenders, obviously. That has sort of been it's been the topic du jour for 4 years now amongst Penguin fans. But, it definitely seemed like there was some questions during these scrimmages of how Matt Murray looked. Gives up the 2 goals, but, I don't really think you could particularly blame him for either of them. One goes off Pettersson and into the net, the other after a brutal Evgeny Malkin turnover. What do you make of the way the 2 netminders performed against the Flyers?
Working backwards here, was Jarry tested? I mean, there was a couple nice shots in the third period, but the reality, he faced, I think, 8 shots, the 8th and final one being from Scott Laughton. I really didn't see the Flyers push Jarry too much. Murray, on the other hand, I thought was in the fire a few times. Yeah, the first goal makes a hard left turn off Marcus Pettersson's shin pads. A goalie only stops that when he gets lucky. Then the second one, obviously, Evgeny Malkin, just one of those turnovers that Malkin had really, I thought, purged from his game this season. And, Kevin Hayes was really strong today. I thought he was up and down the ice. He looked like a legit second line center. And that was my big question about the Flyers, because he's a defensive guy. If he's that strong and that big in the offensive zone in the playoffs, the Flyers are actually a force to be reckoned with. But otherwise, the goalies, I thought each did what he had to do today. Murray can't, blame himself for either of those. And Jarry was as good as he had to be. So Murray, by virtue of a lack of knockout, will start game one on Saturday, unless Mike Sullivan just has a come to Jesus moment and puts Jarry in there. It'll be Murray, and Murray will go for as long as Murray can.
I thought it was interesting. Jim Rutherford said this week he figures if it's a long run, they probably both end up playing. I don't expect whoever plays to have a particularly long leash, given that statement.
Yeah, that's interesting. That was a really interesting statement from Jim, wasn't it? Now, in fairness, when the Penguins won the Stanley Cup, first time they had to go with three goalies. Mr. Game One, Jeff Zatkoff. And then don't forget, Marc-Andre Fleury got his kind of spot start Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Final against Tampa Bay back in 2016. Kind of one in, one out when he lost in overtime. 2017 was the same way, needed both Fleury and Murray. So if you want to give Jim a pass and say you just kind of meant that generally, then, there's your basis to do that. But I think you and I both know that meant a little bit more. The Penguins have a huge decision coming up in October, Murray or Jarry. I almost said Fleury. Murray or Jarry. And seeing Jarry in some playoff action. What's that?
When we get a goalie that doesn't rhyme, we need just somebody else.
I can't wait till DeSmith is the backup, and but they've even got Larmy coming after DeSmith.
Right, there you go. Yeah.
You have to end in a vowel apparently to be a Penguins netminder, but so I think unless Murray is really sharp, I think you will see Jarry, and that leash will be short on Murray in the playoffs, probably for the first time in his career.
Connor Sherry with a very pretty goal early in this game, taking a nice cross ice pass and kind of hesitated, outweighted Hart to the top corner. He's a guy comes over from Buffalo. His numbers, I think he had 10 goals and something like 63 games. That's okay, but that does not sound like a guy that you're maybe necessarily in a rush to put on your first line. Now, obviously, he has the history with Sidney Crosby and Jake Gensel that another player doesn't have. But are we seeing some signs of that chemistry and that line that was so successful in the postseason previously kind of gelling now that it's put back together?
It can. I didn't see what I wanted to see from Sherry today, though. I wanted to see him really working the corners and really being a little bit of a dirt dog, on the wall and being aggressive and a rugger and coming out of there with the puck. I think that's what will ultimately decide if he's successful with Crosby and Gensel, other than just maybe being a tag along. It was a great shot there in the first 5 minutes. I mean, he made himself available. He made himself big. He put himself in that passing lane and made a wicked shot over Carter Hart, who was a little bit deep in his net, but Sherry took the open space and roofed it over the young goalie. That's the good. The bad was he had a couple turnovers. One led to a 2-on-1, and he wasn't overly strong, I think, in the battle zones. So that's what's to watch in the first couple of games against Montreal, because I don't think Sherry is going to have a long leash either.
Who are some of the other options for that spot? Jason Zucker scores a goal. The third line wingers today were, had Hornquist down there, who's obviously played up higher. McCann played center and some wing. What are the other options if it's not Sherry?
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? You begin to wholesale change the lineup if it's not Sherry. because at that point you have to put Hornquist up there, or maybe you gamble on Evan Rodriguez for a moment. That seems like a little bit of a long shot to work, just like Sherry. But you move Hornquist. Let's play that game out a little bit. You move Hornquist up to the top line. Then you have to bring Sam Lafferty or Rodriguez into the lineup. And who's to say Brandon Tanev stays down with that fourth line? Maybe Lafferty goes on the fourth line. You saw in the third period today, Tanev took some shifts with McCann and Hornquist. So, I'm sorry, with McCann and Marlowe. He took the right wing in place of Hornquist. So, yeah, I think the Penguins would like to avoid, Mike Sullivan would like to avoid making 3 or 4 changes, which is probably what would happen if Sherry doesn't get the job done.
Now, obviously, this is one game. The Penguins have no more of the Flyers for now. Obviously, potential future opponents, but everything that they learned and everything that happened today will now sort of be transposed into facing a Montreal Canadiens team that's obviously a good bit different than the Flyers. What did you see that can be meaningful against the Habs in 5 games going forward?
Well, Montreal also will be pinching from the back end. They've got Jeff Petrie, and they've got some mobile guys in their top 4, and they also don't have a lot of offense, in Montreal. So they're going to pull out all of the stops. Also, like Alain Vigneault, they're going to have numbers back. They're not going to make it easy on the Penguins, will Montreal. They're going to have those numbers back. They're going to make the Penguins kind of come through the forest to get to the net. So from that standpoint, it was a good warm-up today against the Flyers. Having said that, though, I think Mike Sullivan's going to have a few more wrinkles for Saturday. He's, and a lot more of the veterans, I think, will be on their game. Shift in, shift out. I don't think you can say, and I probably can't say it either, that we saw the best Chris Letang, and certainly not Evgeny Malkin today. And, Crosby played well, but he certainly wasn't maybe, in 5th gear with the pedal down. And since you're a pit guy, I didn't say hammer down. So the veterans were probably, at 4/5 speed today. And that makes it tough for me to judge what we'll see from the Penguins against Montreal. Montreal's fast, Alan. They got to the Penguins this year in the game that they won and the game that they pushed to overtime. They got to the Penguins with speed through the neutral zone. They're a dump and chase team, much like the Flyers were doing today. Montreal is a dump and chase team that will send the runner in there to go get the puck. And that runner won the puck battle too often in 2 of the 3 games against the Penguins this season. So that's something to watch out for. Marcus Pettersson will have to play a bit quicker, certainly a lot better than he played today. I thought he actually had a down game today. He and Marino had a few miscues, and I think those were primarily on Pettersson's plate. So a long answer to the very simple question, what will we see, from today to Saturday? I think, the Penguins will have to learn how to get through 3 and 4 defenders and not have that transition game where it's 2-on-2 or 3-on-2.
I thought the Penguins' power play looked a good bit unsettled, especially the first 2 times they went out there. Obviously there's going to be some rust, and that's a part of the game that can be difficult to, I think, simulate when you see the same guys in practice all the time, and then maybe somebody does something different or something unexpected, and they certainly haven't been game planning for the Flyers penalty kill. What did you think about the way that the 5-on-4 unit looked out there today for the Pens?
Yeah, I almost fell asleep. Schultz wasn't very sharp on the man advantage, was he? And I thought they just looked lethargic at best. I would have liked to have seen more traffic in front of the net, a bit more banging and scratching within the, close to the blue paint there. Don't forget, though, Alain Vigneault, just knows how to squelch the Penguins' power play. He's been doing it since he was with the Rangers, and And they do that. They push the Penguins into that big drop pass. You know, you saw that from Schultz a few times and Letang, where they go up to the blue line and they stop and they push the puck back because there's 4 Flyers waiting for them. When you see the Penguins doing that, and I know it's a play they revert to and they go to, but when you see them doing that, they're in trouble, because that means they didn't gain the zone on the rush. They're not pressuring the other team's defenders, and they're not creating that chaos amongst the penalty kill that will make you successful. When you slow it down, when you let the other team set up, your odds just go way down.
If you guys have a question or a comment you'd like if you'd like for us to address, easy for me to say, throw it in the comment on the live chat there. We'll take a look at it. Dan, you're in quarantine now. I know you got to run here because you got some.
Well, you know what? I'm already missing Sidney Crosby, and the boys are talking as we speak. So you and I might as well just talk for a few more minutes.
All right.
And then I'll catch the recording the NHL gives to me.
Well, what's the situation there in Canada? I know what you've been doing, but tell everybody what the situation is with you. You're in your own prison there at this moment.
Yeah, actually, the room you see behind me, the Airbnb owner upgraded me just this afternoon to this lovely room. I was literally in a Harry Potter-esque closet for the better part of the last 9 days. And because Canada has very strict quarantine rules, can't leave can't leave your room. You can't go out for a walk. You can't go to the store just to grab something. You are locked in to your room. So my quarantine has been pretty intense since last Monday, and I'm stuck in here until Sunday or Monday as well. But this room is a bit nicer than the closet I was in, that's for sure. But yeah, so deliveries for everything, from batteries for my Xbox remote to cookies and dinner. I can't go out for anything. It's all has to be delivered.
Now, we've obviously been watching what the team's been going through in their quarantine. Saw Sidney Crosby playing some tennis the other day. I've seen pickleball. You've got none of that. But what do you expect the bubble and do you expect different hockey out of this, or is this just all obviously different and unusual and something to pay attention to and talk about, but not going to be something that's meaningful at the end of the day to the on ice product?
Yeah, it really is a mental game. These guys are used to hotel rooms. They're used to mattresses by Marriott and such. So that part isn't necessarily too much of an adjustment. It's the being with your teammates 24/7. It's all of that confinement. And I wish I were quarantining quite like the players are. I could handle some tennis and coffee shops and a movie theater and all of those. But let's be honest, they're not going to use many of those amenities here pretty soon. Once they settle in, once the playoffs begin, I say playoffs as the qualifying round, once the seriousness begins, you're not going to see these guys, floating around, goofing around too much. It's going to be very businesslike, and whoever mentally adjusts to their surroundings is going to do well. Bill Guerin back in, I think, late April, maybe it was early May. So we're just going to throw our arms around it and embrace it. And that's really the attitude that you have to have. You can't think, oh, I miss this at home. I miss my record player. I miss my friends. Or I miss this bar. I miss whatever. You can't have that. In the words of Joe Dirt, you can't have no in your heart. The bubble is a garden. You have to dig it. And if the Penguins do that, they'll be just fine. What's
the, you're talking about, you have to go through this quarantine. When you get to cover a game, what's that going to be like? You're not, it's going to be pretty unusual, right?
Yeah, in so much I'll be up in the press box or, however they have us situated in the arena. And, so that part will be just the same as it's always been. The same views from up top and, bad internet and writing on a deadline and flying and and all that pressure and stress. But the worst part is you can't walk into the locker room and walk up to a guy who maybe had a good game or a bad game and have a conversation with him. Like, oh, what happened in this play? What happened? Tell me about that play. What worked there? What didn't work? All of that extra information and those relationships that we spend all year building are gone now. There's 50 people on a Zoom call with the athletes, and whoever clicks the raise your hand button first gets to ask a question. Sometimes they're good questions. A lot of times they're good questions. And so the stories are going to be very limited. And so, just for me personally, I'll be leaning on a lot of analysis on Pittsburgh hockey now, really trying to break down the granular parts of the game, the big goals, and going into that sort of stuff. But the personal stories and all of that, that locker room stuff, that's what's going to suck in not having.
Yeah, I'm going through that obviously with the own sports I cover, and you do miss the opportunity, I think, to gain that granular knowledge. I think that's a lot of those those casual interactions are, I think, where you learn the most as a reporter. Hey, real quick on that power play in the second period, why didn't you guys do this? Or just what happened here? And that's how you gain a greater understanding. And I think that's the part that's really hard through Zoom, like what you said. And look, I mean, every reporter has a different agenda. People from radio need sound bites, and TV need interesting anecdotes, and you want to know granular X's and O's details. It's very difficult for all that to come together. And of course, that is the world that we have right now. I think everybody's job has been made more difficult by this. So certainly not us griping about it all alone. Dana, anything else you got that we feel like we need to hit from today, specifically as the Pens, again, 3-2 overtime losers to the Flyers? Scott Lawton with the extra period goal past Tristan Jarry. Anything else today that really stuck out to you that you feel like we need to cover here?
Well, I thought there were a couple performances worth noting. It was nice to see Malkin have that third period. I thought that was really important, that he turned that switch and brought it when he kind of thought it mattered. Maybe he was being a bit lackadaisical, so I thought that third period was really important for him. I thought it was important, Marcus Pettersson and John Marino. Make no mistake, Claude Julien was taking notes on that pair today. Montreal got to Pettersson in their season series. They got behind him. They got the edge on him, which allowed them to get to the goalie. So, him having a rough start is worrisome for the Penguins. You might see Johnson and Schultz get more ice time on Saturday too, if Pettersson is a little bit slow coming up to speed. I'm trying to, let's see, who else maybe had a pretty good day. I thought Patrick Marleau, again, showed some hop. And I'd love for him to say definitively that this is it, or he's planning on coming back next season. I think that's the one story we're waiting on. And this pandemic has kind of prevented us from really getting into it and him having to answer that question or come face to face with, is this Patrick Marleau's last ride? It's been 21, 22 years. I mean, he started playing in the 90s, for God's sakes. Bill Clinton was president when he, turned pro. So I think that's a big story we're going to try to fish out here sooner than later. No questions for me, Alan? Nothing on YouTube, huh?
We got, we don't have any questions. Let's see. We've got, no questions. I got more questions, of course, always. I've got questions, but
listen, the longer I talk to you, the less I have to write. And I really don't feel like, I wrote 7 stories yesterday. I think I wrote 4 today. I've
got something for you. I want to ask you about the 5-game playoff series. That's something that we haven't seen. God, I don't think I've seen in hockey in my lifetime anyway. What do you make of that? And what changes about a 5-game playoff series compared to what we're used to?
Well, yeah, I guess not in your lifetime have we seen it. That is a bit old school. I guess the dogs are barking. Don't forget. Was it in the '70s? I think opening round was 5 games, or maybe even into the early '80s too. Things were best of 5. I guess it adds to the craziness of this whole situation, doesn't it? It adds to the chaos. And in that context, it's kind of fun that, hey, you might not like the Pittsburgh Penguins losing, in a qualifying round to a team that has no business being in the playoffs, but it's March Madness, and a number 1 seed can lose to a 16 seed. And sometimes you have to hold your breath, and the other 95% of the fans who want to see the upsets are going crazy. So, I think it's actually fun for me, even though the players probably hate it.
Yeah, I would imagine that the players and the coaches especially are not a big fan of it. But I think the other thing that's very interesting is these games between the teams that have the bye or whatever you want to call it, that aren't playing in this qualifying round. I imagine they're going to look a lot like what we saw today from the Penguins and the Flyers, where I think both teams were trying to win, but I don't think anybody was, there wasn't a fight. There wasn't nobody necessarily putting their future on the line with a big hit or a block shot or something like that. I'm curious to see what's going to happen when these play-in round games end and these teams that will have gone 3, 4, 5 desperate Stanley Cup playoff type games where it's just all out all the way. And then these teams that have played some glorified preseason matches, you might see a big upset in this zany 5-game play-in round. And then you might see a team that has something of a competitive advantage against a way higher seed going forward.
Yeah, I think Boston is really in danger of that, Alan. They've had some controversy up there. Andres Kasha kind of drug David Pastrnak, the NHL's leading goal scorer, out on the town 10 days ago. No mask on. They're walking around. Kasha hasn't actually been on the ice since. And so there's been that little bit of controversy and them trying to get on the same page up there. And you're right, because they didn't have that impending urgency. Hey, we could lose in a few days and our season's over. They're going to play 4 games, or 3 games rather, against Tampa Bay, Philadelphia, Washington, at their own pace. If they want to go hard, they can go hard. If they want to take it easy, they can go easy. And the worst thing that they might do is they have to play the Rangers or Carolina or a wild card team, as they would have anyway, in round 1. So yeah, there's definite danger there that one of those teams takes their foot off the gas and can't put it back down like Tampa Bay did last year.
Is there anybody, you mentioned these teams that maybe there's a low seed that can be an upset. Is it Montreal? Is there another team out there that you think is one of these teams that was let in the door, as it were, by the way the NHL decided to come back to this, that could make a run of it?
I don't really think Montreal can make a run of it. I don't think they have the stuff to beat the Penguins. If they do happen to eke by the Penguins, they will have burned everything they have and be first-round fodder pretty quickly. Kind of like we saw the Islanders last year sweep the Penguins and then get swept by Carolina the following week. You really could see something like that. Chicago is really interesting. They're another team that was out of the playoffs. They're the 12th seed in the Western Conference. They've got Edmonton. Chicago has all of the experience, though, with Taves and Keith. Seabrook isn't going up, and whoever their goalie is, be it Corey Crawford or Malcolm Subban or the guy, they're going to hire, what was his name, David Ayers, the emergency goal, whoever the hell they put in net. Chicago was playing pretty well at the end of the year. And if DeBrincat puts a few in net and Edmonton with their inexperience starts to panic, that could be, I think that's the series that I'm watching for the big shocking upset.
in general, it seems like the NHL is doing a pretty good job with its return to play protocol as far as testing goes. They've maybe done, I think, the best as far as, not having a lot of cases, not having issues, keeping their players in the bubble like the NBA notably had this week. That's why you're in Toronto and not Montreal, by the way. It seems like there is, at least from the outside, a good bit of optimism about this thing working. Are you getting that sense as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think everybody is pleasantly surprised at just how well the NHL has done here. I mean, those bubbles, I may have done a drive-by before I got to my quarantine. Stayed in my car, windows up, just in case anybody is wondering. I did a drive-by Hotel X. In fact, I'm not staying too far from there, and the barricades were going up, and they were shooing people away already last Monday. A guy would have to really want to break quarantine and really be careless. For him to get out, he has to walk past, I don't know how many hotel employees, other players. It would just be one of those things. I think at this point, the way everything is set up, a guy would have to, go cloak and dagger. Oh, here's a story for you. Like the 2005 World Junior Championships with 17-year-old Evgeny Malkin and 17-year-old Alexander Ovechkin, when they tied sheets together out of their third-story window in Grand Forks, North Dakota, to have Big Macs at 2 a.m. Someday I'm going to get Malkin on the record talking about that, but their cab driver who picked them up every night, religiously swore to me that was the truth.
Well, I mean, there's not a lot of trouble to get into in Grand Forks other than McDonald's, so I could see that happening there. That's good. Obviously, a tough situation for the players that have had to make the decision to not play. You mentioned Seabrook, but it doesn't seem to me like there have been, whether it's enough of those on one team or a player of just irreplaceable talent, that has at all upset the balance of competition here for the NHL.
No, I think the NHL may have held its breath or maybe even made some back channel phone calls because, Carey Price was waffling. His words, his body language, I'd say a month ago, there was real question if a player like, Carey Price was actually going to compete. Let's say Carey Price doesn't, and another Montreal and Max Domi doesn't compete. All of a sudden, you bent the rules to allow this 12 seed into the tournament, and their best players say, that's okay, guys, thanks. It would have been a real black eye on this return. And I think the players knew that too. There was a lot of disagreement back in mid-May when this whole agreement, 24 teams in a bubble city or 4 bubble cities was agreed to. There was a lot of dissension in the players' ranks, but once the final decision came down, everybody kind of fell in line, at their own pace. The Penguins were very quick to jump in line, Alan. So did the Toronto Maple Leafs. They had 20 plus guys show up for their phase 2 workouts on day 1. The Penguins, I think, had somewhere around 12 to 14 guys show up on day 1. So, it's a tribute to hockey players and the hockey mentality. It can be a bad thing sometimes, but it's also a great thing in times like this when they all pull together.
Ryan Lobig thinks the Rangers could be that kind of team that could make an upset and make a run. They've got a relatively interesting matchup in the first round with the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina was a big surprise last year. I don't think they're taking anybody by surprise this year. What do you make of that first round matchup? It's on the bottom of the Eastern Conference bracket.
Yeah, they won't take anybody by storm in the first round.
Yes, I missed that.
I had to do it. The Rangers without Chris Kreider, who was injured a day or two after he wasn't traded, had a bit of a run I think they were 4 points out of a wild card spot when the season was paused, and they may have had a game in hand on the teams they were chasing. Always, though, I think the Rangers are still a bit soft for playoff competition. Always watch Columbus, John Tortorella, Cam Atkinson, and those thumpers. They get some goaltending from Merzlikins or Korpisalo, whoever is in net. Always watch them. I mean, they embarrassed Tampa Bay in round 1 last year. And this is the same team, and they're finally healthy. They were actually, Alan, they were the team that was more hammered via injuries. They lost more man games, more serious man games than the Penguins did when all was said and done. So now that they're healthy and ready to go, watch Columbus.
All right. Anything else before we wrap this up, Dan? I know you've got some writing to do, and I've got some writing.
You're trying to get rid of me? Is that what you're trying to do?
I'm trying to. Yeah. I mean, it's been, well, you know what? This has been a good length, I think, actually. You know what? Obviously, we had this plan for Pittsburgh postgame. Matt Geico was the driving force for it, and we got it started. I think we did 2 of them. And then we ran out of sports real quick. But it's been very good to get these back going again. And this is obviously the first time. I mean, you've been able to do one about hockey, but we've had a couple about the Pittsburgh Pirates returning to play, the Pittsburgh River coming back. Yeah, they the round ball with the swing and the miss. Yeah, they're on now actually. We'll have more Pirates again tomorrow, I believe. I think we're gonna have Matt on that one. No, Mike Asti actually tomorrow, because he has Josh Taylor as his guest of KDKA. JT, a great baseball mind. So that should be good. And then Matt has Friday, as the Pirates have the Cubs. And then I believe Matt will be with you on Saturday after the Penguins and Montreal, the first game of the 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs.
Is he allowed to stay up that late?
He will have to be. I don't know. Well, it's great when you have a newborn, you sleep sort of whenever, right? I don't know. Yeah. Probably not at all. It's probably the opposite. He's probably not allowed to sleep.
Yeah, it might be 3 of us on Saturday, right?
Yeah, could maybe 4 if Matt's got 1 in each arm now, and but we're great to have him on the channel, and great to have him spearheading this project, which I think has been a wonderful addition to what we do here at Pittsburgh Sports Live. So I just want to thank everyone for watching. Thanks for the comments. Thanks to Dan for taking some time out of his busy writing schedule up there in Toronto, and good luck with the rest of your quarantine and your coverage. We hope that you're there for a very long time covering the Penguins in Toronto. Let's make a month of it. What do you say?
Well, I think we'll be here for at least a month. The question is if I have to drive from Toronto to Edmonton for the conference or Stanley Cup final.
That's a haul. I don't even want to look up how long of a drive that is.
You do not.
We'll cross those several hundred bridges when we get there on the way from Toronto. It's just out Yonge Street, right? Just make a left and keep on going, I suppose.
Well, actually, yeah, there essentially is one highway. You get on it and you stay there for about 3 days.
Great stuff, Dan. I really appreciate you taking the time with us. And thanks to everyone for watching. Again, Penguins 3-2 overtime losers to the Flyers in a game that does not matter, but the next one will. And we'll be there for that one and all the rest of them as the Penguins continue into the Stanley Cup postseason. Thanks for watching. I'm Alan Saunders, and this has been Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live.